Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 12 of Mondays with Mooch. In this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about the lift train ride movement, what it means. We're going to talk to Mike, who's one of the founders with me, and I think I'm going to try and get some of the other guys' input as well. But a lot of you guys know that I was in the motorcycle scene motorcycle club world for about 15 years. I spent a couple years, or I spent just under a year hanging around and prospecting for an old school club in Oregon called the Outsiders, where I learned a lot of really cool stuff about old school tradition, the history of motorcycle clubs, just really that old school mentality. And it was a smaller club, so the focus was really on like true brotherhood. And I learned a lot from them. I spent 2 years in the Vagos Motorcycle Club. I definitely learned some things there, and then learned some things that I didn't like as well. And then I spent 14 years active as the member of the Mongols Motorcycle Club. And in that time, I ended up coming into some positions of leadership, and was grateful enough that I was kind of able to take what I knew from the Mongol program, the rules, the bylaws, the constitution, and I was able to get with the presidents and the regions that I oversaw, and we kind of developed some of our own program. And a lot of it was from things that I saw over the years that worked versus what didn't work, things that seemed to have meaning and value. But everything always, the goal of it was always to try and better our brothers. So, you guys have probably heard me say this before on some other podcasts, but when I first started coming around clubs, that a lot of these old school clubs will tell you that, if you're going to join, you're going to lose your wife and your job and probably your freedom. And, there's always that death or jail adage, like, that's what's going to happen at the end. And I never really wanted to buy into that. I couldn't imagine trying to bring someone into this club or into the club I was in that I called a friend and wanted to call a brother, and then, potentially trying to do it something that's going to that's going to ruin their life, or it's going to have a negative impact on their life. So, as the years went on, I did my best to try and build something that I thought was going to be a positive influence on people's lives. I wanted people to come around and join, and when they said, after looking back on reflection, say, whenever I joined such and such club, my life got better. There was people there that held me accountable, that taught me some new things, really changed my life for the better. Not the, oh yeah, when I joined such and such club, everything went downhill. And I'll tell you, over the years, a lot of people used to come and say, oh, my wife just left me and I just got fired and now I'm ready to join the club. And I would never take those people. I would always say, come back when your life's going good, because a lot of those guys, once life got good, would kind of dip out. And so when I retired from the Mongols last year, or last December, there was a lot of things I wanted to keep going, just because I no longer wanted to be in a major one percenter club. I was kind of wearing a patch. I didn't want to give up the brotherhood that I had built with some guys over the years. Plus, I liked this, obviously I like to belong to something, right? I mean, if any of you guys know my story, I grew up in the anti-racist skinhead scene. I was in a gang during that. I was in a band. I'm on a jiu-jitsu team. Like, I've always been the guy that wants to belong. So, when I left, I saw an opportunity to build something I could still be a part of, but something that was going to be a positive. So I took the things that I've learned over the years and really put that into this lift train ride movement. So part of it is, our guys have to work out a minimum of 3 days a week. So we have bylaws, constitution, we have some officers, and not specifically so much as a way to have power or authority, but it's a way to hold everyone accountable. So, the way I always look at it is brothers should never put hands on other brothers. So when it comes to discipline or holding people accountable, you got to have some sort of rules. So whether it's fines or, different things, you have to have rules to hold people accountable. So we really got pretty strict with that stuff. So, when a lot of people these days are in riding clubs, and just get together and do rides and have fun and hang out, and I completely get it, but we wanted to be a step above that. We wanted to be different than that. We do, obviously, the main focus is still motorcycles. We meet, we do sit down and meet once a month to plan upcoming rides, runs, any sort of events, bike nights, all that cool stuff. We still want to participate and be active in that. The other thing we do, though, is we meet, mandatory, we meet once a week, but not necessarily sit down in like a church fashion, but we meet once a week, whether we're working out together, doing jiu-jitsu together, riding motorcycles together, or just out hanging out, watching the fights or bar hopping or having dinner or whatever. So, the focus is really on building a solid brotherhood. And what I've learned over the years is You can really get to know somebody on the road. That ride time, that's a huge part, like building the bonds and the brotherhood with the motorcycles and the riding. But the other part too is building that bond outside of that. And you can only do so much getting to know someone when you're partying, right? But when you're lifting weights with people, or more specifically when we're doing jujitsu together, we're sweating together, we're working really hard together, these are the types of things that really build those bonds. And that's when we look at this brotherhood. And that's when things are tough or challenging, we know what we're getting out of this. We know what the reward is, and it makes those things worth it. So I got together with some of the guys that had been one percenters as well, and they had left that lifestyle behind. A couple of the guys weren't in a club before, but they were friends or hang-arounds. And we really started to kind of brainstorm and come up with, what do we think we can do with this lift, train, ride movement? What's the goal? What can we put together that's going to be going to be positive and still keep us active in riding? That's the biggest part, keeping us active in riding. So we started to build this lift, train, ride movement, and the first day of it was January 1st of 2022. And we all met and we developed some bylaws. It took us probably a couple churches to develop some bylaws, elect officers, and then we really hit the ground running. We started doing planning rides and runs, and our spring kickoff ride, we did a group ride to Gatlinburg where we all pitched in and got this big cabin that we rented at Airbnb right outside of Gatlinburg. So we did the rides through the mountains and we partied at the cabin. We brought our old ladies. I mean, it's really kind of based off of family, so the old ladies are involved, and it's been a really positive experience. So what I thought today that I would do was kind of talk to you guys a little bit about the idea of lift, train, ride, but with Mike. And tonight what we're going to do is I'm going to have Mike on, and we're just going to talk about some of our ideas and what do we think has worked and didn't work, and kind of what the goal is moving forward. So check it out. Let me know what questions you guys have. Shoot me an email or leave me a comment below, and we'll go from there. But as always, share, like, and check it out, guys, and let me know what you think. All right. So before I brought you in, I kind of gave a brief overview about, what lift, train, ride was, and just kind of a general term. But how would you describe just kind of the movement, or what's your idea towards what lift, train, ride is?
My idea would be, I would say our defining factor would be our focus on what we call true brotherhood, supporting each other, whether it's to do better physically, obviously emotionally. I think that's a big factor. I think we all push each other to be better, and I think we truly stand up for the brotherhood, what that means. That's cool. Yeah, you bring up a good point that I didn't necessarily touch on initially, but the emotional aspect, like having people there to talk to work through stuff. I mean, I think we've kind of talked before about, I think every grown man, sometimes goes through a depression or anxiety, or maybe just needs advice or motivation. How has Lift, Train, Ride helped you in that regard? The biggest aspect is having that emotional support system, a true emotional support system, non-judgmental, people that truly care about you, and not only care about you, but offer solutions to your issues, whether they, particularly emotionally. We're always there for each other, whether it's just to hang out, talk, lift together, train, obviously motorcycles. It's just, as a group as a whole, I think it's a support system. Yeah, and I think that shared interest kind of brings everyone together, and then when the tighter we get, it's easier to open up and kind of have those discussions, because when you're asking for advice, or at least me particularly, when I want to hear from people I respect and I trust. So I think spending time on the road together, lifting together, we kind of build that bond where we can be pretty open about just about anything. I think that's a really good point. I think having an actual, you mentioned that bond that you build, that's only built through time on the road together, training together, lifting together. It's built, and that's the backbone of that support system. Is, like you said, it's people you respect, people you've been through things with, people that you trust. I mean, that's a huge factor. And, I think I introduced a little bit before about how you were in the club with me. We left around the same time. But, I think I'd be curious, or I'd like to let everyone know, like, what kind of attracted you to that club world in general? Like, even before Lift, Train, Ride, like, what just attracted you to motorcycle clubs? I think the structure of it. I think the structure was appealing. Uh, the camaraderie, the brotherhood. That's sounds cliche, but it's true. You're riding thousands of miles together. You're with each other all the time. It's I think for a lot of people that join that scene, it's you're looking to belong to something bigger than yourself. I think that's a big factor.
For sure. Yeah, I really like the structure as well. And I think that accountability piece is something we brought over with us to Lift Train Ride. Um, but, there's kind of that militant structure of we have rules and, everyone has to follow them. It's kind of funny because, you think like outlaw bikers and people say, oh, we live outside of society and we don't have rules. But then anyone that's been in it, you realize like the club world's got probably more rules than anything, right?
Oh, absolutely. That's I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions. It's very structured, and it actually it to touch on that. That's had a lot of positive effects in my life. Dating back to the original club that we were in together. That structure it helps you deal with everyday life as well.
Yeah, I think one thing that we've always been strict about, in our chapter and our circle that we've also carried over is that piece where the follow through, right? Like if you're sitting there in church and you commit to something, or we're talking, hey, we got something coming up. Um, I think one thing we've always stayed really strict on is if you commit, then you better do it. And I know that's helped me outside of club world. It's helped me in work. It's helped me with jujitsu on a lot of different levels. So how has that impacted you?
I mean, that's right along the same line. Absolutely, it's helped my number one. I would say even my relationship. It's helped. It's helped me, like you said, hold myself accountable and be accountable to other people. And that I think that's a big role in relationships. It's helped me in that aspect. Um, Professionally, it's helped me. I started a new career recently, and that type of mindset is very conducive, for a lot of aspects of life.
Yeah, I think, when people are partying or you're having a good time or you're in a good mood, it's so easy to be like, yeah, yeah, I'm there, count me in. And I think outside of club world, you see a lot of times that people don't follow through with that. So I think holding each other accountable that has had a huge positive impact on all of us because now I know like, hey, if Mike says he's going, Mike's going to be there. So that's been the plus for me too, for sure, because I don't have friends outside of the circle that are necessarily on that same page.
Yeah, and that's actually been, I would say, a character flaw of mine in the past. Was like you said, you're hanging out, everybody's excited, you commit to something. The next day rolls around, you're not feeling great, you don't want to do it, but we hold each other accountable to that. So I think it reinforces that. If you give your word for something, you follow through, and that carries over to every aspect of life.
Before we started Lift Train Ride and we were in the club together, what kind of things did you like about club life in general?
Traveling was a big part. Obviously, the traveling, I love that. You know, I think the structured aspect of it, I was drawn to that. The camaraderie, obviously, that's a big factor, and it's a fun lifestyle. It just is.
For sure. What when we left and we were like kind of looking at starting something new, what were you looking for in this new project, or what were you looking for when it came to starting something new?
I think the biggest factor for me was we talked about we wanted absolutely nothing but positive influence on our members' lives, and I think to me that was the biggest factor right there.
Is there any like specific rules or bylaws that we came up with that you think kind of set us apart from maybe other riding clubs or even motorcycle clubs?
Yeah, for sure. So we have the mandatory 3 day a week workouts, which we hold each other accountable for. I think that's huge. That being fit physically, not obviously has the benefits of the physical aspects, but we've talked about that before. The mental carryover is tremendous. So the rule of working out 3 days a week, or lifting or training, which I got into jujitsu because of you, and that's been a big change in my life.
Yeah, that's a good kind of segue. So you got into jiu-jitsu how long ago?
I went to my first class right about, I'd say, 2.5 years ago, really. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think when we met, that's kind of what our common ground was. We were talking about lifting, and I was telling you about the gym, and you were interested in kind of coming and checking out the gym, right?
Yeah, you know, I'd heard about PSF through various people, and I was kind of interested in it. And then you mentioned you trained there and invited me, so I showed up to a class, and yeah, I've been going since.
And what kind of takeaways have you gotten from jujitsu? Like, what kind of things you really like about it?
Um, the biggest one would be that there's really no faking it. There's no you can't fake that. It's you either put in the effort, get better. It's all you know. I'd say that's the biggest thing I like about it, and then also obviously the physical benefits.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a good takeaway because definitely it's one of those things where you can say whatever you want, right? But you have to put in the work to actually get there. Like there's no shortcut. And the way I think the things it's done for me when it's helped like with my job or even on long rides or whatever, is just that mindset of you've got to get through it. I'm sure you've been in those positions where you've been in a bad position and you're getting smashed and you look up and there's 2 minutes left and
Yeah.
you have to just go through that mindset of, well, I have to get through this. There's no easy way out of this. And for me, that's played a huge role. Like I said, whether it's, in club life or regular life too, but that's been a super positive takeaway for me. Plus, we talked about before, you and I going out, hanging out, and partying at the bars, we have a good time. That's always a good time. But the brotherhood we build when we're sweating together and working hard together and in bad situations together, I think is kind of next level.
No, I agree completely. Everybody's friends when things are going well, but whenever you're like you said, whenever you're 5 minutes into a round, tired, that builds different types of relationships. Going through something like that together, or as far as club riding goes, what you're on the road. We've been through all kinds of rain together. It's, terrible conditions. It builds a different type of relationship. I think that's for sure true.
Late night cold weather and t-shirts.
Yeah, yeah, no gloves.
Yeah, that was rough. Yeah, that's what I think too. I think, when I'm suffering in those situations, or whether you're getting a long tattoo, any of those moments where you're like, wow, this really sucks, I always relate back to jujitsu because, it's like, hey, if I can get through that, I can kind of get through anything. But it's just kind of knowing that you have to just kind of bear down and keep trying until the clock runs out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, and it's all right. So you've been doing jujitsu for about 2.5 years, and then we've got, I think to me that's another big thing of lift train ride is we lift weights and we ride motorcycles, but there's that train aspect. Like we're wanting more guys to get into some sort of fighting arts. And I think if any of you guys follow us on social media or not, you'd see we've done some stick and knife fighting classes together. Mike and I have done some stick and knife fighting classes together. We did a whole chapter one before. What do you think of that kind of stuff and like how it relates to real life?
I think I think it's extremely important to do training of that sorts. Obviously you're never ready for any kind of situation you may run into, but doing training like that, it just makes you more prepared to defend yourself in any kind of situation. And I think if we're being honest with each other, I think the type of lifestyle we live, I think it does tend to lead itself towards some potential physical issues. Obviously not on our end, but if you have to protect yourself, and I think taking classes like that's important. To be as well prepared as you can at all times.
For sure. Yeah. I think, just the confidence from maybe not being well versed in it, but having some experience. It's the same with jujitsu. If you've been training for 2 years and you end up getting in a fight with someone that's never trained, you already know you're going to have that edge, right? Like if you're training against another white belt, it's going to be different. But if you're training against someone that's not trained, and I think that stick and knife stuff, or Muay Thai or boxing, but it's all kind of goes in that same, like you at least have some confidence going into it, which is usually a kind of a deciding factor.
Yeah, absolutely. I like everybody does. I thought I was pretty competent as far as self defense before I started training, and then whenever immediately from the first class we went to, I realized that I was I had to start training because I was really more incompetent than I realized.
Yeah, we all think, from growing up and doing some street fights, we all have this perception of how we are as fighters until it really gets tested, right? And then
Yeah.
that's pretty rude awakening, or at least it was for me too.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then once you do start doing some of that training, I think it just reinforces, like you said, it makes you a little more confident, be able to handle yourself, if you have to in a self defense situation. And it's obviously we talked about all the other positive carryovers. There's really no negative aspects to it other than soreness.
Yeah, definitely. And like we said, the brotherhood, the just the the bonding, the time spent together doing something different or new or scary, exciting, whatever. I think that plays a big role to it too, don't you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's. I mean, I love doing. I love trying new things. That's like with the stick and knife fighting. That's something I would have never thought to do had it not been like a structured group event. And it's interesting to learn new things like that. It's things that you wouldn't think of outside of our situation.
Right. Or like you and I did that class taught by those, special forces guys. And it was kind of just like a combatives class on how to handle yourself in violent situations. And it's something where I think you and I were talking about like, yeah, we've been in these situations before, but it was cool just kind of going through it and practicing it and then spending time with each other while doing it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's the things like that are I like you said, I truly believe they build a different type of bond, which is really the foundation of our lift train ride movement is that real legitimate bond at the core that comes from training, doing things like that. It's just not a lot of people do types of things like that together.
Right. And I think another part is we kind of tried to hit on this when we were in the other club, when we were building our chapter. But even with Lift Train Ride, I think something important that maybe people don't focus on a lot is how you look to the outside, right? Like how we represent ourselves. And I think Lift Train Ride's been really, really good at making sure that we're polite, we're respected, or respectable. We treat people as we'd want to be treated, but we also have that vibe of don't mess with us. And that's kind of like the goal that we used to have or have always had is, if we walk in somewhere and someone goes, oh crap, so and so's here. But when we leave, I like that they're like, oh, those guys were great. I wouldn't mess with them, but they were the nicest guys. Like, have you always been like that before we got into like this type of stuff, or has it had you like focus more on it?
No, that actually I was as you were saying that I had I think that's one of the biggest reasons that we've all gotten so close is that we've. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to speak for you, but I would imagine you've always had that kind of mindset, and that's why would you not be polite to people unless they're impolite to you? It doesn't make sense to me anyway. So always be polite, courteous, but like we talked about, you should be able to handle yourself if you have to, and that's I've always had that mentality, and I think that's one of the things that kind of drew me to the group initially.
Yeah, and that's one thing that always kind of turned me off before was just that bully vibe or that bully atmosphere. Like, just because you have a patch or that you belong to something, that you go into these bars puffy chested and those types of guys that are, do you know who you're messing with type of stuff. And we've never gotten behind that or I mean, I've never, as leadership, we've never put up with that. That's something that we would strike down really quick. And that's definitely something that I would say we brought into Lift Train Ride is the way that we act in public and the way that we interact with people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, nobody wants to deal with those types. And like you said, you burn bridges, you get kicked out of establishments. It doesn't make sense to me to act that way. It's not the way that obviously we like to portray ourselves. And I just I don't see any reason other than to be positive, courteous and polite. Yeah.
One of the really cool things we've taken is we've only been doing this Lift Train Ride for about a year, but the amount of messages I get on social media or people that talk to us in public about how we've inspired them to get back into fitness or to ride more, just that really positive stuff has been super overwhelming and cool. And one of the things that I think people sometimes lose sight of is how we present ourselves to the public. So, I mean, there's that politeness piece, but there's also like we're showing us working out. We're showing us doing jujitsu together. We're showing us spending time on the road together. How do you think that plays a role into like what people think of, what we are and what we do?
I think it's one of the biggest factors. I don't think you see that very often where you see, like you said, the just by outward appearance and maybe some intimidating looking people, but then they're polite to them, and that leaves a lasting impression with people.
For sure. So what do you think out of Lift Train Ride or club stuff? What's the biggest impact it's had on you so far? Like, what was the most positive kind of takeaway you've had from it so far?
That's pretty hard. I mean, that's hard to say. I would say there's two sides to it. There's definitely the physical aspect of it. I think I'm close. I'm down to I've lost 70 pounds now since since I've met you, and we're in the club, and then we started Lift Train Ride, and that started me on the track of getting in better shape, being healthier, and then there's the mental aspect. I know I have a support group that truly cares about me, that I can go to anytime. So it's hard to pick just one.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, 70 pounds is huge, man. So congratulations on that. And I think that's one of the benefits of jujitsu in general. I mean, working out too, but when you're lifting weights, we've always talked about there's that balance of like you want to get big, so you're taking in big calories, and it's like the getting big versus looking good. But the cool thing about jujitsu, I think, is you have to focus on your cardio because of how hard we're training. And so that makes you focus on your water intake and your food intake and making sure you're getting enough sleep. And I think, all of those things kind of work together to make sure that you're just being a healthier person.
No, they definitely, they all, it's a chain reaction. Like you said, there's days where I'm sitting at work and I'm forcing myself to drink water because I know I'm going to class that night. And you need, if you don't drink water, you'll regret it. You obviously know that. So it's like, it's a chain reaction. And then, you start eating healthier, and then you see the difference in how you feel day to day. It's just, it compounds.
Yeah, and I think that brings up another rule that we've had in Lift Train Ride, that it's when it comes to like drug use and stuff. So, a lot of us like to party, and we go pretty hard on the weekends from time to time, but we have a no meth rule. We don't like we won't let members do meth. I think the other part is, I think we really are good at keeping an eye on each other. So we've talked about before that, if you're partying on the weekend, cool. But if we see also now you're partying during the week, or the biggest thing is you're missing obligations, right? You're not showing up to Sunday training, or you're missing Sunday jujitsu because you went too hard on the weekends. That's when we've done a good job at stepping in and almost having interventions, I would say. But the one piece that I've really liked that from taking away from that is how we've all stuck together to make sure that everybody stays on track.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's the biggest factor is that accountability to each other.
Yeah, trying to help each other be the best versions of themselves that could be. And that's not saying we're perfect, and that's not saying that we're clean and sober. It's just saying that there's certain things that are going to lead you down the wrong road, and we would prefer just not to go down that road in the first place.
Yeah, and in fact, I would say that one of our strong suits is that we are honest with ourselves. We do recognize when people are having issues with, whether it's alcohol or whatever it is, and we recognize that, and we're honest with ourselves and we're honest with each other, and that's not a lot of people are able to do that.
Yeah, I can think of a lot of times where a lot of us have talked one-on-one about maybe getting a little too far out there and need to reel it back in, and the group coming together and supporting that goal and helping, whether it's staying sober for a little while or just taking a break or whatever it is. But that's the other really cool piece there, is that I think the groups always work together to help people reach those goals.
And it's always in a positive way. It's never negative. It's never, hey man, it's never negative. It's always in a positive light. It's, hey, we feel like you're having these kind of issues, so we're going to do it with you. I think that's a big factor, is that we don't just tell people where they're messing up. We offer solutions, and then not only that, but we offer to do it with them to help encourage them and help them down a better path.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's definitely a big piece. And I think that brings up another valid point too, is that, when we were in the club and we had mandatory once a week meetings, I think there was times where, because we were required to meet every week, we would find things to talk about or find things to discuss. And I think sometimes that would turn negative, right? Like someone was always in trouble, or we were kind of bad mouthing someone. And taking that and changing what we did with Lift Train Ride, I think has really kind of nipped that out of there. So we still meet once a week, but it's not necessarily for a sit down meeting. We might be working out together. We might be riding motorcycles, going to dinner. We get together for football games and sporting events. But how do you think that's impacted, like how Lift Train Ride's been able to stay so positive?
No, I think it's a balancing act, right? You want to be together as much as possible, but like you touched on, if you're just getting together to sit around and talk, you're going to find reasons to pick at things and to nitpick and whatnot. But if you're doing an actual activity, particularly a positive one, like working out or something like that, it keeps the attitudes positive. There's no bickering back and forth, nothing like that.
So you and I and a couple of other guys, we were the ones responsible for putting this lift train ride together. Um, and like we said, it's only been a year, and right now, so we kind of have like a motorcycle club within the movement, I guess is how I would describe it. Because lift train ride, we want everyone to be able to represent it, right? Like anyone can wear the T-shirt, get the patch with the laurel that says lift train ride, because we really want to, promote that healthy lifestyle. But then within that, we have our like the group that we sit down with and the officers and our symbol and stuff, and we've kept that very tight knit, like just a few guys locally because of the hanging out every week and stuff like that. What kind of goals do you have for the future when it comes to that, or what would you like to see when it comes to growth or expanding?
That's a tough question because I mean, I have maybe potentially some big goals in mind. In short term, I think what we're doing is we're just trying to spread our ideals and our message, and are trying to have a positive impact on the motorcycle community, which I think we're doing a very good job of. Long term, it's hard to say. I mean, we'll just have to, I think, just see how it goes. I think the big factor, like you said, is as far as club related goes, we want to keep a high quality member. So it's hard. Expansion's a hard topic.
I agree, and I get hit up all the time about people wanting to join and get more involved. But being in the club world for as long as I was, some of the negatives I saw was how clubs were so quick to recruit, like the race for numbers, and then it's what type of member do you have? And I think that's something that we learned from that mistake, and that's not something we want to repeat. I don't want to have this chapter's cool, but that chapter's this, or this state's cool, but those guys don't quite follow. And I think that's going to be really hard to do when it comes to expanding, because I don't know how to keep your thumb on it when they're farther away. So that's kind of my issue with growth. I would love to bring more people in on the movement, but then I don't want to water it down either.
Yeah, that's definitely. I mean, that's definitely the major issue with it is we stress quality over quantity, and how do you regulate that from a distance? I mean that's a tough topic.
Right, and what's cool is we have not everyone's from the same club. We have guys that were officers in other major clubs, guys that weren't in clubs at all. So I think we have such a cool, varied perspective that any issue we address, we get a lot of different insight and different input. And I think that would be challenging if it wasn't in person, like if it wasn't sitting down and talking about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That the distance would definitely be the biggest factor in that.
And then our focus we've talked about before is people use the word loyalty and brotherhood, and I think sometimes it rings kind of hollow. But I think we've backed it up, and we back it up by examples and follow through. I'm not sure how we would do that in other states. Unless one of us lived there or something that we could model what we've been building. That's kind of been my challenge when I think about growing.
Yeah, I think it would have to be for growing. It would have to be somebody that we know personally. It can't be somebody that we trust that actually would fit into our group here. Not like you said, not somebody that's going to have a chapter somewhere else that we may not get along with everybody, but somebody that's on the exact same page. And that's difficult to do.
What advice would you have for someone that is wanting to kind of get into the movement themselves? Like maybe not necessarily join the inner circle, but getting into the lift train ride movement.
I think the initial step is just to reach out. You can message either myself or you or any of the other members, and just hit us up. Just start talking. If you're local, hit us up to ride motorcycles, come train with us, lift weights, anything like that, or even on social media. We communicate a lot through there. If you want to just start posting, tagging lift train ride, and we have T-shirts and stuff like that available. We really appreciate when people take pictures at the gym or training and that, and I think that's the best way to start. And then where you go from there is kind of up to you.
Yeah, that's kind of my vision. I would like to see people, getting the support patches and the T-shirts, and then sharing them on their social media of them following the lifestyle. So let's see you working out in the gym or training, or you and your friends out riding, and really, represent the movement in a positive way, like show that you're out living that lifestyle. I think that to me, I think is going to go the longest way when it comes to growth. Because down the road, if we decide to open the doors to other chapters or other areas, I'd like to say, oh, hey, those guys in Louisiana, they've been doing this for a year and they're all training and they look good and they fit the image. And we have a better idea of who people are before we just jump in. I know
No,
that's far from perfect, but it's kind of just the vision I have for it.
no, absolutely, and I think that's a good path. And I, we have people now that are following the lifestyle that aren't necessarily a part of the inner circle, but they live that lifestyle, and they show it, and they train, ride motorcycles, have tight knit groups, and they're following the exact ideas we have. So, like you said, if and down the line we did want to potentially expand, those people have already shown that they're committed to that lifestyle.
I had a reader or a viewer message and asked the question, and I want to kind of get your input is, do you think that to be in a motorcycle club or a riding club, do you think that you need to have a patch? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I don't. No, I don't think so. No, I don't. What I would ask why. I would ask what does that or in my okay. Let me put it this way. If you feel like you have to have a patch to be in a club or to live that lifestyle, are you really doing it for the right reasons? Or are you doing it for a patch to give you some kind of false idea of clout or anything like that? But my opinion would be you're probably doing it for the wrong reasons if you have to have a patch.
Yeah, that's one of the things I like about the movement too. Is outside of having some little patches and stuff, we don't have like we call it the lift train ride movement, but our club really doesn't have a name at all. And I think it kind of weeds out those people that are trying to join for, like you said, clout or some social status. I would say, if you're wanting to build a riding club or a motorcycle club, the focus should be on the brotherhood and the riding, not what you look like. And one thing we found that's been very helpful is the focus on structure, having tight rules and holding each other accountable. To me, that's more important than any sort of patch. And the benefit too is it takes a lot of politics out of it, right? We're not worried about territory. We're not worried about other clubs. There's a lot of benefits, I think. Plus, like you said, the type of people we attract, they're going to be doing it for the right reasons. So I think it really maintains the focus on the motorcycles and the brotherhood.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
All right. Well, then before we wrap up, what's kind of your vision? Where would you like to see Lift Train Ride go?
End goal for me personally is just to continue living this lifestyle and to find as many like-minded people as we can that want to be a part of this lifestyle, because it is nothing but positive, and I think we have a good message and a good lifestyle for people to emulate. So just spreading it to more people.
Yeah, and that's my goal as well. I'd like to see more people know about it, but because not so much for the clout, but to get involved in it. I'd like to see the influence of it spread. I love seeing bikers that are lifting weights and staying in shape. I love the focus being on brotherhood, but really my idea is that be the best brother you can be so that we can help brothers be the best brothers they can be. So how can I help those in my circle? And I think one cool thing about kind of what we have going is that, if we got a guy that owns a business, we're not asking for free stuff from him. We're paying for that business. And we got, our homie at DB Gear makes, a lot of our t-shirts and stuff. So we're always going through the same company because it's the friend. And I think there's that community part piece to it, right? That sticking together and supporting each other. And to me, big picture, I would like to see more of that, like more supporting each other's companies and backing each other up and building each other up, I guess, is the biggest piece.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I think I hadn't thought of it that way, but almost like expanding our I mean, for lack of better terms, our network of friends, because we do nothing but support each other. That's what we're all about. And the more people, the more we can help support each other.
Awesome. So before we wrap up, what's your name on Instagram?
Just Midwest Monster Mike.
All right, cool. And I'll tag you. We have the Lift Train Ride. It's lift_train_ride. So if you guys follow us there, I always tag everybody in it, so you can track everyone down from there too.